right, and welcome back to another edition of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. I'm your host, Sean Meyers, flying solo this week. It is a holiday weekend here with Memorial Day going on, so not able to get Sean Saputo or any other co-hosts to step in this week, so I'm going by myself, but still got a lot of topics to discuss this week here on the podcast, and we're going to begin this first segment, the trending topics of the week in professional wrestling. And there's a pretty big topic this week. It is the acquisition of Smackdown Live by Fox for 5 years, totaling $1 billion. And what a coup for WWE to secure that type of money for what is really considered their B show in years past. I know that they've done great work with SmackDown over the past couple years since the brand split to try to bring it up to the same caliber as Raw, but still in terms of tenure, in terms of general feel of the show, I don't think it's quite at Monday Night Raw level still, but maybe this deal changes things. So joining Fox in 2019, there's a lot of questions that will have to be answered, including when will SmackDown air. There's been some rumors that'll go back to Friday night. That was the home of SmackDown for quite some time, less than a decade ago. Remember, the show started on Thursday nights, moved to Fridays, and then more recently moved up to a live version on Tuesdays. It had always been taped on Tuesdays previously when it aired later in the week. So if they do change the night of it, Friday night seems like a tough situation for the WWE to draw ratings. But again, with Fox paying all that money, it will be that company that really has its say, and WWE will have to accommodate accordingly. The other question is, if it does move to Friday, how that affects the taping schedule. You would think the show would still have to be live. They really probably would suffer in terms of ratings if they tape the show by the old format on Tuesday and then show it on Friday with spoilers being so readily available. The ratings just won't be there. So it seems as though that SmackDown will have to stay live in some capacity, whether it be on Tuesday nights, which I think would be preferred, or Thursday or Friday, which are also options going forward. But that's still quite a bit in the future before we get to that. What this means, however, now, the big story is, what will WWE do to maybe increase the presentation of SmackDown, to make it seem like the A show, or at least on equal footing with Monday Night Raw. And additionally, the other question this poses is, what does this mean for the status of Raw, which is also going to be up for grabs pretty soon here. Much like SmackDown, there will be a bidding war for Raw. Might stay on USA. We don't know that yet. But if you see Fox throwing $1 billion at SmackDown, you'd have to think that Raw could get even more money from a potential suitor. Maybe even Fox. Maybe they double up their wrestling experience, and of course they would have to keep that on Monday nights, you figure, because it has been a staple on Mondays dating back to early 1993, 25 plus years now, of course. But this is great news for WWE fans and certainly anyone in the company, because there's a lot of money to be made at this point. $1 billion richer is the company. The stocks have skyrocketed as a result. And it just creates hopefully some excitement that might put more of an emphasis on the weekly television shows in the months and years to come. It seems as though in the past 3 or 4 years, there's been a little bit more of a shift towards the WWE Network, making that a priority. It'll still be a priority, but it might be just a little bit lower in the pecking order now, because I think that there's going to be some pressure. With $1 billion comes high expectations. SmackDown's probably going to have to maintain or increase its ratings. Probably the goal is that it will increase its ratings once it switches over to Fox next year. And that might mean more star power. That might mean a bigger weekly feel for television, where more is determined on there. Maybe you have title matches. Maybe you have world title matches every now and then. You don't want to do it all the time. You have more significant feuds that culminate on weekly television as opposed to going to the pay-per-view. These are all changes that might be worked in slowly, but ultimately, if you fast forward about a year, year and a half from now, middle to late 2019, you could see maybe a substantial difference in how the weekly television looks in WWE. And I think that's a good thing because right now there's a feel that it's a bit stale. There's a lot of talent in the company. I don't think anyone's saying that there's not enough talent in terms of the in-ring competitors, but the storylines have been mediocre. At times, it feels like the shows lack purpose. They lack long-term direction, that they're sort of just thrown together hastily. Maybe this change, one, changing of networks, and two, maybe changing of priority to put it more of the spotlight back on the weekly television could be the change and the boost that WWE needs for Smackdown, which I think has been pretty good recently. Smackdown, since the Superstar shakeup, has had a lot of momentum with some of the names that they have. Daniel Bryan returning. That was a bit unexpected, figuring that his career probably was over as an in-ring competitor, but he back in the fold, joined by Samoa Joe, who came over in a Superstar shakeup. Nakamura and AJ Styles remaining on SmackDown as well. And you look at some of the other guys who have joined the Blue Team recently. Andrade Cien Almas in recent weeks making his debut overseas, and now probably looking to be inserted into a pretty significant feud maybe within the weeks or months to come. He's a great in-ring worker. So certainly the talent is there on SmackDown to have great in-ring performances. You just want the writing and the promos to be up to par. We'll see if that happens, but certainly the motivation is there now with this new TV deal in place. And again, the next domino to fall now will be Monday Night Raw. We'll see if it stays on USA, if it'll have a new home, and again, how much money it will draw. You have to figure with SmackDown getting $1 billion, Raw at the very minimum will equal that. My prediction is it will be more than that. It's just a much bigger name. When you talk to a very casual wrestling fan or someone who doesn't follow wrestling at all, they still know about Monday Night Raw. They know it's on Monday nights. They know that's the big show every week. Probably don't know what time, what day SmackDown might even be on because it's switched so many times. Probably don't know the channel for SmackDown either because it's been on a few different channels over the years, but pretty consistently Monday Night Raw starting at either 8 or 9 o'clock. It's been on USA for the vast majority of that time, and it's much more established. It's about 5 or 6 years older than SmackDown, and generally it draws bigger ratings. I don't know that there was really much of a time at all that SmackDown was drawing higher ratings than Monday Night Raw, so it's more well established and it's a bigger moneymaker right now. So I think when you talk about the comparison between Raw and SmackDown, the market should be even more lucrative for Monday Night Raw, and we'll probably find out pretty soon what its future holds. Will it again stay with USA? I think that would be big for USA to keep Raw. Having lost SmackDown, that's already one big blow. If they lose Monday Night Raw and pretty much lose WWE entirely, then that's going to be really tough for the network. But it's going to turn into probably a bidding war. That's going to do it for this first segment of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling Trending Topics, in which we discuss some of the latest happenings in the world of professional wrestling. But stay tuned for parts 2 and 3 as we'll discuss Raw and SmackDown from this past week and look ahead a little bit at Money in the Bank as well. That's going to do it for this episode. We'll be back for part 2, reviewing Raw here on the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. Don't go anywhere.